Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. Well, we got some news today that confirms something that we kind of knew already, which is the Republican Party doesn't really exist anymore as an institution. It has essentially been cannibalized by Donald Trump, subsumed into MAGA, with profound implications both for Republicans and for the American democratic system as a whole. You can see the evidence of this everywhere you look, like a new revelation that the Republican National Committee's anemic fundraising has left it with a paltry $8 million on hand. Not exactly the war chest a major political party needs in an election year, especially considering Democrats have nearly 3 times as much in their coffers. Speaking to Puck, one RNC member offered this blunt assessment, quote, "We're not in as strong of position as we'd like to be. Certainly fundraising is way below what we've hoped." Puck also reports Trump World is rather unhappy with the state of affairs at the RNC, and they are looking to install a MAGA loyalist at the top, something Steve Bannon openly advocated for earlier this week when he called for the ouster of party chair Ronna Romney McDaniel.
Why is Ronna McDaniel and that team over there? They don't want to do it because they understand they're culpable. What in the hell was the RNC doing? They're guilty of a mortal sin against this republic, and that sin is not going to go away until she is removed as the chairman of the RNC. I'm tired of the happy talk, and you know why she's got to take out a line of credit? Because you cut her off, right? The war room, I said not another penny, not another $25 or $50 a month, not 1 cent until they're gone.
Okay, now let's just be clear here. The idea that Steve Bannon, two-shirt, is strategic genius, is solely responsible for the pitiful fundraising of the committee is laughable. That's not it. But it does remain true the MAGA movement has had it with the RNC, which is ironic for a number of reasons. First of all, because RNC chair Ronna Romney McDaniel is so unabashedly pro-MAGA, she tried to pressure Nikki Haley, Trump's only credible remaining opponent in the Republican primary, to drop out, only for Trump to then stab McDaniel in the back so he could play benevolent dictator and say that Haley should stay in the race. It's also ironic because Trump, of all people, is partially responsible for the RNC's financial woes, because his super PACs are hoovering up all of the small dollar donations so he can use them to pay his tens of millions of dollars in legal bills. And to be clear, it is always the case to some extent. The presidential candidate and their movement controls the purse strings of their respective parties during an election year. But Trump is just on another level as he subsumes the Republican Party into his own party of one. And you can see the trickle-down effects of this all over the country as the Republican Party, as a party, destroys itself like a snake eating its own tail. A lot of the problems are because Trump himself is a conspiracy-obsessed maniac who cultivates the most deranged characteristics in his diehard policies. In Michigan, the state Republican Party voted to fire its head, Christina Caramo, earlier this month and replace her with Pete Hoekstra, a former Republican congressman and Trump ambassador to the Netherlands. If you're a regular watcher of this program, you might remember Caramo. She's the election-denying conspiracy theorist who ran to be Michigan's Secretary of State in 2022.
Having intimate relationships with people who are demonically possessed or oppressed, I strongly believe that a person opens themselves up to possession. Demonic possession is real. How people become possessed, I don't know all the details of it, but I would surmise that the sexual licentiousness in our culture is a lot of spiritual things are going wrong.
So she didn't win that race in 2022, thankfully, and you can see why Michigan Republicans have decided they don't want Caramo running the show anymore. Here's the thing. She's refusing to step down, and it's now splitting its party in half. In fact, the RNC held a big meeting today with representatives from across the nation, and Michigan Republicans did not have a seat at the table because Caramo refuses to step down and hand the reins to Hoekstra. In fact, both of them showed up today, each claiming they are in charge of the Michigan Republican Party, and neither one was officially recognized by the RNC. Now, factional weirdness happens in politics all the time, these kind of party fights. So if this was a one-off, you could say, yeah. But it's not just Michigan. This is a trend, okay? In Arizona, you've got the failed MAGA gubernatorial candidate Kari Lake, who is now involved in a convoluted feud that has pushed out that state's Republican chairman, Jeff DeWitt. Now, depending on who you ask, DeWitt either tried to bribe Lake to stay out of the upcoming Senate race or he was the victim of an elaborate scheme from Lake to oust him from his position so that she can claim total control of the state party. Now there's a new head of the Arizona Republican Party, a so-called election integrity activist who worked on Trump's 2020 campaign. Although her election to party chair wasn't all smooth sailing, as the New York Times reports, get this, quote, the vote was delayed by a lengthy debate over a motion to ban the use of electronic tabulators, mistrusted by many election deniers in the party, to count the ballots. But we're not done. Meanwhile, in Nevada, where the Republican Party is run by a guy who was literally criminally indicted for his role in Trump's fake elector scheme, the state is holding both a Republican primary and a caucus next week. Because of, again, some complicated infighting, Nikki Haley would be on the primary ballot while Donald Trump will be competing in the caucus. Now, the caucus is the one actually awarding delegates, which means the whole contest is basically rigged in his favor, which is the whole point of them concocting this entire enterprise. Also, another irony, of course, because if the situation was reversed, Trump would be railing to anyone and everyone about how the contest is being stolen from him. And this is what you got to understand. When he calls things rigged, that is an aspiration. It's not moral condemnation. He wants things to be rigged in his favor. That is his model. He thinks everything is rigged and should be rigged in his favor. And I'm pretty sure, to be fair, he would win a fully fair, unrigged Republican primary. That said, it's hard to disentangle the current mess the party finds itself in from Trump and his movement's obvious power grab, the complete control the MAGA movement has over the entirety of the party apparatus. And again, this isn't just some, backroom politics of the RNC and the Republican Party. This is Donald Trump's vision for the entire country: to bend the fabric of reality and the American experiment and its political system to his whims. The current broken state of the Republican Party you see, which is now run by cranks whose only qualification is their fealty to him, is his vision for the whole U.S. government.